My ex just barged into my house during our custody exchange and screamed in my face that I'll never see our son again, and now I'm trembling so hard I can barely hold it together. I never wanted any of this. My hands are shaking so hard I can barely type, but I need to get this out. 2 months ago, I thought we were finally settling into a peaceful routine after our separation. We agreed to split time with our 6-year-old son, Jonah, as evenly as possible. It wasn't perfect, but Jonah was adjusting, and I was hopeful we could co-parent civilly. That was before everything went to hell. It all started when my ex, let's call him Ryan, begged me to take him back. He showed up unannounced at my apartment one night, tears in his eyes, saying he missed me, that he wanted us to be a family again for Jonah's sake. For a brief second, I saw a flash of the man I once loved behind his desperate eyes, and I hesitated. But then I remembered why we ended. I remembered the nights I cried myself to sleep after discovering the dating app on his phone, the lies, the broken trust. I remembered how hard I fought to find myself again after leaving, so I told him no. I told him gently but firmly that we were done and there was no going back. His face changed in an instant. The sorrow turned to rage so quickly, it made my stomach drop. He shoved over a chair in my hallway and stormed out, shouting that I was destroying our family. I had to cover Jonah's ears so he wouldn't hear the ugly things his father said as he slammed the door behind him. My gut twisted with guilt and fear, but I knew reconciling would have been a mistake. I thought his anger would blow over. I thought he'd cool off and we'd continue co-parenting as before. I was so wrong. Within days, the real campaign began. It started small. Snide comments during custody exchanges. Passive-aggressive texts accusing me of keeping Jonah from him. Completely untrue. I always stuck exactly to the schedule we agreed on. I brushed them off as him just venting his hurt. Then I noticed mutual friends becoming distant. One friend, Ashley, stopped answering my messages entirely. Another, Marcus, gave me weirdly curt replies. Finally, one of our mutual friends, Nina, broke the silence. She called me one evening, her voice trembling, and asked what was going on between Ryan and me. I told her the truth, that he wanted to reconcile, and I didn't, and now he was upset. That's when Nina told me Ryan had been privately messaging many of our friends, telling them I was planning to take Jonah and move away, cutting Ryan out of our lives. I was stunned. That was a total lie. I would never do that. In fact, it was him who once threatened to move out of state with Jonah during one of our worst fights last year. I reassured Nina that none of it was true. She sounded relieved, but others had already swallowed his lies. The next blow came on social media. I woke up to a barrage of texts from coworkers and acquaintances. Saw your ex's post. Are you okay? This sounds crazy. Call me if you need anything. My heart pounded as I logged in to see what they were talking about. There it was on Facebook, a long, ugly post on Ryan's profile, essentially painting me as an unstable, vindictive mother trying to alienate him from his son. He wrote that I refused to even consider keeping our family together, as if that was a crime, and implied I was more interested in hurting him than caring for Jonah. He made vague references to me not being in my right mind lately and needing prayers. To anyone reading, it sounded like I'd lost my sanity. And the comments. God, the comments were full of people offering him support, saying things like, "Stay strong, you'll get your boy," and "So sorry you're dealing with this, you're such a great dad." Some of those names were people I thought were my friends, now consoling him for having to deal with me. I felt sick. It was a nightmare seeing my reputation shredded so publicly with half-truths and outright lies. I wanted to respond, to defend myself online, but I resisted. I didn't want to drag our personal issues into a Facebook war, especially not where one day Jonah might see it. So I stayed silent on the post, but the damage was done. More friends went radio silent on me. Even Jonah's teacher acted chilly at pickup, and I wondered if she'd seen it too. That morning I pulled her aside and, without going into detail, assured her Jonah was safe and loved with me. She kindly said she wasn't judging and just hoped we were okay, but I left feeling humiliated and paranoid about what else he was telling people. Then came the legal attack. A week after his reconciliation attempt, I was served papers at work. Ryan was filing for full custody of Jonah. I read the documents sitting in my car during lunch break, hands shaking so violently I spilled coffee all over them. In his affidavit, he'd painted me as an unfit mother. I couldn't believe the lies on those pages. He claimed I had a, quote, history of psychological instability, likely because I saw a therapist for a few months postpartum when I had mild depression after Jonah's birth. He knew how hard I fought through that, and how well I've been since. Yet there it was in black and white, twisted to make me look dangerous. He also claimed I'd been, quote, interfering in the father-son relationship and exhibiting erratic behavior. I remember my vision going blurry with tears of rage and fear as I read those words. It felt like I was in a bad dream. How could the man I once loved, the father of my child, stoop this low just because I wouldn't get back with him? I took the rest of the day off sick because there was no way I could focus on work after that. I went straight to my sister's house and collapsed on her couch sobbing. She helped calm me down, and we started Googling family lawyers that afternoon. I hadn't needed a lawyer during our separation because we'd been amiable enough, but now he was drawing battle lines. I found a lawyer who could squeeze me in for a consultation the next day. I barely slept that night, jumping at every noise, half expecting Ryan to try something else. The next morning I opened my front door to take Jonah to school and nearly tripped over a small stack of papers on the doormat. It was a notice of an emergency court hearing, scheduled for the end of that week. He was asking the court for temporary full custody until our case could be heard, on the grounds that I was mentally unstable and a flight risk. A flight risk. The irony would have made me laugh if I wasn't absolutely terrified. He was the one who once threatened to disappear with Jonah, and now he was claiming I would do that to justify ripping my child away from me. I got both of us ready somehow, pretending everything was normal for Jonah's sake, and dropped him at school. As soon as I was alone, I broke down in tears again. I was so scared of losing my baby. I felt helpless, but I knew I had to pull it together and fight. Meeting with the lawyer, I'll call her Michelle, gave me a shred of hope. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had seen it all. When I shakily explained the situation, Michelle nodded like none of it surprised her. She'd dealt with vindictive exes and false allegations before. She said the first priority was to counter his emergency custody request. She assured me that in our state, courts need real evidence to grant something that extreme, not just one parent's accusations. That eased my mind a little, but Michelle warned me that judges often err on the side of caution when there are allegations of mental instability or potential flight risk. We need to show them you're stable, rooted, and that disrupting Jonah's routine would harm him, she said, already strategizing. We gathered documents. Proof that I've been at my job for 5 years, letters from my therapist affirming I attended sessions for a short period and was doing well, statements from my sister and a couple of friends, the ones still on my side, attesting to my good parenting. In the days leading up to the emergency hearing, I lived in constant anxiety. Every time my phone rang, my heart would leap, fearing it was more bad news. And it was, one evening. A call from Child Protective Services came while I was cooking dinner. The caseworker introduced herself and said there'd been an anonymous report about my household. My stomach dropped to the floor. She politely asked if she could schedule a home visit to ensure Jonah was in a safe environment. I knew exactly who was behind this. I agreed to a visit the next day, because I had nothing to hide. But after I hung up, I threw the spoon I was holding across the kitchen and screamed. Jonah was startled. I quickly composed myself and told him I just saw a spider. I spent that night frantically cleaning an already clean house, making sure everything was perfect for the visit, and coaching Jonah, gently, on how to answer questions about home life, terrified that if he said the wrong thing it'd be twisted against me. The CPS visit was nerve-wracking, even though the worker was calm and kind. She interviewed me, then spoke to Jonah privately while I waited, heart-pounding, in the other room. I peeked and saw her asking him who cooks for him, what we do at home, if he feels safe. My sweet boy answered innocently, "Mommy takes good care of me. I feel safe with Mommy." I wanted to both cry and hug him through the wall. After checking the apartment and seeing nothing concerning, the caseworker wrapped up. She told me off record that everything looked fine, and these kinds of reports are common during custody disputes. I could tell even she suspected my ex was using them to harass me. I felt a mix of relief and boiling anger. How dare he bring strangers into our lives, into our home, to pry into our private world just to make me uncomfortable. It was violating and infuriating. Finally, the day of the emergency hearing arrived. My sister came with me for support while my mom watched Jonah. I hadn't seen Ryan in person since the night I turned him away. When we walked into that courtroom, and I saw him at the other table with his high-priced attorney, his parents have money, and I'm sure they were funding the circus. My stomach flipped. He actually looked worried, which gave me a sliver of grim satisfaction. Maybe he thought his stunt with CPS would scare me into not showing up. Well, I was there, pale but determined, and I clutched Michelle's hand under the table as the proceeding began. His lawyer spewed the same lies from the affidavit, that I was mentally unstable, that I'd threatened to take Jonah away from his father. Never did I ever say that. And that Jonah was in danger under my care. I had to bite my tongue not to scream at those absurd claims. When it was our turn, Michelle calmly presented evidence to the contrary. She had letters and statements, and she pointed out that uprooting Jonah from his mother without cause would be harmful and traumatic for him. I'll never forget the moment my ex took the stand to give his statement. He put on his best concerned dad face and talked about how he was just worried about me, that he loved me and Jonah, and that he only wanted full custody to ensure Jonah had a stable environment, until I got the help I needed. The audacity of him acting like this was for my benefit, as if this wasn't a vindictive power grab, made my blood boil. I think the judge sensed something was off in his demeanor. She frowned at some of his more dramatic claims, like when he tried to say I'd been incommunicado for days. I hadn't. I just stopped engaging with his harassment beyond necessary child logistics. Then, to my surprise, the judge asked if there had been any police reports or documented incidents supporting his concerns. His lawyer had to admit there were none, because I've never harmed anyone or been a danger. The judge ended up denying his request for emergency full custody, citing lack of evidence. I almost collapsed in my chair from relief. Ryan, on the other hand, looked furious. His jaw clenched and his face went red. The judge did, however, order that we continue with our regular custody arrangement and set a date for a full custody hearing in a couple months, where a thorough evaluation would happen. So the fight wasn't over, but at least I hadn't lost Jonah that day. Leaving the courtroom, I had to walk right past Ryan. He muttered as I passed, low enough that security didn't hear. "This isn't over. You'll regret doing this to me." I didn't take the bait. I kept walking, head high, even though inside I was shaking like a leaf. But as soon as I got in my car, I broke down sobbing in my sister's arms. It was a small victory, but the war raged on. In the weeks since, things have only gotten uglier. Ryan has doubled down on his smear campaign. He took to Instagram now, posting smiling photos of him and Jonah from his custodial days, with captions implying I barely let him see our son and how heartbreaking it is. Meanwhile, he sends me nasty texts almost daily, calling me a psycho and a bitter bitch for putting him through this. I ignore most of them, but I save every single one to show my lawyer. I also got smart about communication. On Michelle's advice, I stopped responding to Ryan via text and moved all necessary discussions about Jonah to email or a co-parenting app that logs everything. That infuriated him even more because he couldn't as easily twist a phone call or scream at me without an audience. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, worried sick about the upcoming custody trial, wondering what other tricks he might pull. I started a journal to document every interaction, every time he was late to pick up Jonah, or any odd behavior, just in case I needed it as evidence. Living like this, documenting your life like a criminal trying to prove your innocence, is exhausting and soul-crushing. Which brings me to tonight. Tonight was supposed to be a normal Friday exchange. He was due to drop Jonah off at 7 p.m. after his week with his dad. I had pizza ready and Jonah's favorite cartoons queued up for a cozy movie night at home with me. 7 p.m. came and went. No word from Ryan. I texted, then called. No response. By 8 p.m., I was livid and worried. Was Jonah okay? This wasn't like Ryan. For all his faults, he usually stuck to the schedule. Probably because he knew any slip-up could hurt him in court. My mind went to dark places. Had they been in an accident? Or was he doing this on purpose to mess with me? At 8:30, I finally saw headlights in my driveway. I let out a breath of relief, ready to hug my kid, but that feeling evaporated when Jonah stumbled in the door sniffling, eyes red. He'd been crying. Right behind him, Ryan strolled in uninvited, looking smug. I immediately knelt to ask Jonah what was wrong and hugged him tightly. Ryan answered for him, voice dripping with false concern. He's upset because he doesn't want to leave my house. He said he wants to stay with me and not go back to you. I looked at my son, confused and hurt. Jonah mumbled into my shoulder. I don't know. He seemed scared to talk. I glared up at Ryan, telling him he needed to leave. Our custody exchange was on neutral ground for a reason. We'd been doing handoffs at a nearby McDonald's parking lot to avoid scenes, per my lawyer's suggestion. Him barging in was crossing a line. Ryan smirked and said, I figured why upset him with another car ride. He wanted to tell you he'd rather stay with me. My heart dropped. Was my own child turning against me? It felt like a slap in the face, but then I saw the look in Jonah's eyes. Pure confusion and fear, and I knew this was just another manipulation. I stood up and told Jonah gently to go to his room and put on his PJs, that I'd be there in a minute. He nodded, casting a worried glance at both of us, and shuffled away, clutching his teddy. The moment he was out of earshot, I lost it. I hissed at Ryan, quietly but furiously, asking what the hell he thought he was doing. He stepped closer, towering over me. Face it, you're losing him. He'd rather be with me. Why don't you just stop this fight and let us be? You can go live your life, and I'll raise our son. It'll be easier for everyone. I was shaking with anger. Get out of my house, I managed through clenched teeth. I didn't want to scream and scare Jonah. You have no right to come in here, he laughed under his breath. Or what? You'll call the cops on me? Go ahead, it'll just prove how unhinged you are, calling cops on your kid's father for bringing him home late. I was so close to slapping the smug look off his face, but I held back. Instead, I repeated, Leave. Now. Something in my eyes must have told him I was truly done playing games, because he finally shrugged and walked out the door, but not before saying, You're making a big mistake. This isn't over, not by a long shot. He slammed the door, making me and a picture frame on the wall jump. After he left, I sat on the floor and just sobbed, pressing my palms into my eyes. I felt completely defeated. It's like every time I manage to stand up to him, he finds a new low to hit me from. I worried about what he said. Was Jonah really saying he wants to stay with his dad? Or was that planted in his head? My 6-year-old is caught in the middle of this tug of war, and it's tearing my heart out. I eventually collected myself because I had to go comfort my son. Sure enough, I found Jonah quietly crying in his bed. When I asked why he was crying, he whispered, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Daddy kept asking me if I was sad to leave his house. I said I was a little sad because we were playing a fun game. Then he got mad and said I should tell you I want to stay with him. I didn't want to, Mommy. He started sobbing that he was sorry. I hugged him and told him none of this was his fault. Mommy and Daddy have grown-up problems, but we both love him so much. As I rocked him to sleep, my tears fell into his hair. It took every ounce of willpower not to march out, put my son in the car, and drive far away from this madness. Now it's past midnight. I thought I'd have a quiet evening with my boy, but instead I got hours of emotional torture. After Jonah fell asleep, I decided to write this all down because I feel like I'm losing my mind. I don't know what to do next. The full custody court date is only a few weeks away now. I'm terrified of what else Ryan will do before then. I'm terrified that maybe his dirty tricks are working, that the court might actually believe his BS, or that Jonah might inadvertently say something that could be used against me. I love my son more than anything. He's my baby. The thought of losing him, of only seeing him on some weekends if Ryan wins, is unbearable. But I also know that living under Ryan's thumb would be unbearable too. I'm emotionally exhausted and scared to death, but I have to keep fighting. For Jonah's sake, and for mine. If anyone's been through something like this or has any advice or just words of support, I could really use it. I feel so alone right now, fighting a battle I never wanted to fight. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who offered support and advice on my original post. I was at my breaking point that night, and reading your responses made me feel less alone. I'm sorry I haven't been able to update until now. Things have been a whirlwind. It's been about a month since my original post. In that time, we had our final custody hearing, and as expected, the lead-up was absolute chaos. A few days after my post, I got a call from my lawyer, Michelle, saying that Ryan's side had submitted witness statements to bolster his case. To my shock and deep hurt, one of those statements was from our former friend Ashley. The same Ashley who ghosted me had apparently swallowed Ryan's lies and wrote that she feared for Jonah's well-being with me, citing complete nonsense. Like me once saying I felt overwhelmed as a new mom years ago, which is true of every mom, but she spun it like I was unstable. When I read that, I felt like I'd been stabbed in the back. I cried for an hour out of betrayal and frustration that he'd managed to turn even a good friend against me. Michelle prepared me for the worst going into the court date. She warned me Ryan might try to sling mud and provoke me on the stand. I was terrified. This was it, the moment that would decide if I kept my child or not. My family came to support me. My sister even testified on my behalf, rebutting Ashley's claims by describing how I lovingly care for Jonah every day. The hearing itself lasted several agonizing hours. As expected, Ryan's lawyer went on the attack, bringing up everything from my postpartum therapy to completely fabricated stories of me isolating Jonah from his dad. It took all my strength not to break down or blow up in rage. When I was on the stand, I focused on one thing: my love for my son. I calmly explained how I've always encouraged a relationship between Jonah and his father, despite what Ryan was doing to me, and that I only ever refused to reconcile with Ryan, not to keep Jonah from him. The turning point came when the court-appointed child advocate, essentially a therapist who interviewed Jonah as part of the evaluation, gave her report. I had been anxious about what Jonah might say, not because I've done anything wrong, but because he's 6 and could be easily confused or coached. The advocate testified that during her private talk with Jonah, he expressed love for both of us. And then he mentioned something that made my heart ache. He said, "Daddy told me I should tell people I want to live with him." According to her, Jonah seemed confused and a bit upset when he said it, like he knew it was a weird thing to say. The advocate gently pressed and asked if he wanted that. Jonah apparently answered, "I love Mommy and Daddy. I want to be with both." I saw Ryan's face across the courtroom turn pale when the advocate revealed this. He knew he'd been caught. The advocate concluded that it sounded like Jonah was being coached and that it was not coming from the child's own wishes. She also noted that aside from that incident, Jonah appeared well bonded with me and there were no signs of any instability in my home. In fact, she recommended that Jonah's primary residence remain with me for consistency, with ample visitation for his dad. She stressed that both parents should work on communicating better for Jonah's sake, throwing a bit of shade at both of us, but I knew which one of us had been poisoning the well. At that moment, I wanted to leap up and hug her, this stranger who saw the truth. I stole a glance at Ryan. He looked furious, whispering harshly to his attorney. Finally, the judge gave her decision. She cited the lack of evidence for Ryan's claims, and even expressed concern over the apparent coaching of Jonah. She decided against granting Ryan full custody. Instead, she formalized our arrangement close to what it had been before all this. I am designated the primary custodial parent. Jonah lives with me and I make day-to-day decisions, and Ryan gets substantial visitation. Every other weekend, some holidays, and a weekly dinner visit. She did include some new conditions. We have to use the co-parenting communication app for all communications, so the court can review if needed, and we both must attend a co-parenting class and family therapy sessions with Jonah to help ease the tension. I was fine with all of that, anything to help my baby. Ryan, however, was clearly not happy. He basically lost what he was fighting for, and now the court was indirectly calling him out as part of the problem. When the judge read the decision, I broke down in tears of relief, right there at our table. My mom squeezed my hand. I didn't win full custody. Honestly, I never wanted to cut his dad out completely. I just wanted to keep my son safe and with me. But the nightmare of losing Jonah to Ryan's lies was over. Or so I thought. After the hearing, in the hallway, Ryan walked by me, close enough to whisper, "You'll regret this. Watch your back." It was a menacing, hate-filled tone that made the hairs on my neck rise. Not 1 minute had he accepted the outcome, or thought about what was actually best for Jonah. I didn't engage. I just went home, emotionally drained but so grateful that the court saw through his act. The weeks since the hearing have been strangely quiet and tense. At first, Ryan blew up my phone with angry texts about how I humiliated him and how the judge was biased and how I'm turning his son against him. I didn't take the bait. Per the court order, I've only responded via the app and only about logistics. When he realized I wouldn't engage in a fight, he stopped sending the tirades. But the sudden silence is almost scarier. He's been unusually quiet on social media too. No more rants or posts about me. It's like the eye of the storm. He did have Jonah for the first time under the new schedule. Last weekend. I was nervous as hell sending my boy off with him after everything, but legally I have to, and I also want Jonah to have a sense of normalcy. I told Jonah it was just like before. He gets fun time at Daddy's and then comes home to me. Drop-off went smoothly enough, though Ryan refused to even look at me. Throughout the weekend I was on edge, half expecting some crisis. But Jonah came back on Sunday evening okay. He was happy to see me and chattered about how Daddy took him to the zoo and bought him a new Lego set. He seemed okay. Except he did ask me a strange question before bed. "Mommy, can I live with both you and Daddy in one house like before?" My heart twisted. I gently explained that Mommy and Daddy are happier in separate houses, and he gets to have 2 homes, one with each of us. He accepted it, but it's clear this has all affected him. Of course it has. I also noticed Jonah mentioned something in passing. He said, "Daddy told me maybe we can go on a big trip to Disney soon, all of us." I was surprised and asked, "All of us?" He said, "Yeah, me and Daddy. And maybe you can come if you want." I have no idea what Ryan is telling him or planning. A trip to Disney? We certainly haven't discussed that. And given our situation, that seems far-fetched unless it's another manipulation tactic to make Jonah think fun times only happen with Dad. Or, I hate that my mind even went here, but could Ryan be thinking of taking Jonah on a trip without my permission? The custody order says neither of us can take Jonah out of state without consent from the other. Disney, if he means Disney World, is out of state. Maybe I'm paranoid, but after everything, can you blame me? I don't want to jump to conclusions. It could just be a hollow promise to win Jonah's favor. Still, I'll mention it to Michelle, my lawyer, in case it becomes relevant. My gut is still uneasy. Ryan's up to something, or at the very least, he's not done punishing me in one way or another. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. Jonah is my priority, helping him feel stable and loved, and trying to undo the damage this fight has caused. We started with a family therapist last week, just me and Jonah so far. Ryan is supposed to schedule his own sessions or joint ones per the court, but who knows if he will. The therapist said Jonah has some anxiety and confusion, no surprise. But we can help him by keeping routines and reassuring him he's loved by both of us. I am doing my absolute best to follow that advice. I wish I could say I'm at peace now, but I'm not. I'm relieved at the legal outcome, yes. However, I know Ryan too well at this point. The battle might be officially over, but his war against me feels far from done. I'm praying I'm wrong. I'm praying he'll accept reality, focus on being a good dad during his time, and let us all move on. But the paranoid part of me is sleeping with one eye open. I'll update again if anything major happens. I really hope I don't have to. Update 2, I genuinely hoped there would be no need for another update. I wanted so badly for things to calm down and to never have to relive this nightmare. But here I am, and things have gone from bad to worse in the most unimaginable way. It's been a few weeks since my last update. For a short while, it almost seemed like we were finding a new normal. I was cautious, but hopeful. That hope was shattered last week. Last Friday was one of Ryan's scheduled weekends with Jonah. I dropped my little boy off at daycare in the morning, as usual, and Ryan was supposed to pick him up from there after school. We had arranged, through the court app, that I'd meet him Sunday evening at 6 p.m. at the police station parking lot, a neutral, safe exchange location we switched to after the court order. I spent the weekend trying to distract myself from worry. I kept myself busy cleaning the house, preparing Jonah's favorite dinner for Sunday, and repeatedly checking the co-parenting app even though I knew Ryan wouldn't message unless it was to taunt me. Sunday came. 6 p.m. came. No sign of Ryan or my son. At 6:05, I sent a polite, "We're here, are you close?" message on the app. No response. By 6:15, I was pacing. My mom, who had driven with me just in case, I still never go alone to exchanges if I can help it, told me not to panic yet. Traffic could be bad. But I knew. Deep down, I felt a cold wave of panic start to rise. By 6:30, I was dialing Ryan's number. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I tried again. Straight to voicemail the second time. I walked into the police station lobby, by then visibly shaking, and told the desk officer that my ex hadn't shown up with my son per our custody order. Initially, the officer was calm, suggesting perhaps he was just running late. I could hardly form words beyond, "He's not answering. He's supposed to be here." They had me wait a little longer. By 7 p.m., with still no word, the fear in my chest exploded into full panic. I was pleading with the police now, telling them about the custody battle, the threats, the fact that he'd hinted about a trip. It felt like they weren't taking me seriously at first. A lot of times one parent being late isn't treated as an emergency. But I think the look in my eyes or the tremble in my voice convinced them this was different. They finally dispatched officers to drive by Ryan's house. I sat in that station, my mind going to the darkest places. He's taken my baby. Oh God, what if I never see my son again? I remember actually sinking to my knees in the lobby at one point, sobbing, while my mom tried to hold me up. When the patrol car got to Ryan's house, he wasn't there. Through the app, we had his address on file. The officers reported back that the house was dark, no car in the driveway. They knocked, no answer. One officer peered through a window and saw nothing amiss inside, but also no sign of anyone. That's when it became real. He was gone. I felt like I was going to throw up. The police started treating it more seriously now, and parental abduction. They took a detailed report from me. I gave them every bit of information I could. His license plate, the make and color of his car, his parents' addresses, they lived 2 states away, his close friends' contacts, even mention of that supposed Disney trip in case he was headed to Florida. An Amber Alert was issued for Jonah. I never imagined in my worst nightmares that I'd be seeing my own child's name and description on an Amber Alert. It's utterly surreal and horrifying. The next 24 hours were the longest and worst of my life. I didn't sleep a second. Instead, I was on the phone with police and anyone who might know something. I called Nina, the mutual friend who had stuck by me, to ask if she'd heard from Ryan. Nothing. I even called Ashley despite her betrayal, and she was shocked and knew nothing either. If anything, she sounded remorseful and scared when I told her what was happening. Ryan's parents were frantic too. They claimed he never arrived and they hadn't heard from him. I wanted to believe them, and maybe they were telling the truth. They love Jonah too, and I can't imagine them condoning this. Still, I couldn't be sure if someone was secretly helping him. I was living a nightmare. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt into my throat. Friends and family came by, bringing food I couldn't eat and offering prayers and support. I just kept picturing my sweet boy's face, wondering if he was okay, if he was scared, if he was asking for me. Apparently, the police pinged Ryan's phone, but it was off. They also put out alerts on his credit cards, and I later learned security cameras caught his car at a highway toll booth, heading south out of state Sunday afternoon. That confirmed he was on the move. I was both furious and terrified. Furious that he could do this to Jonah, and to me, and terrified of what he might do next. Was he going to try to disappear forever? Would he harm Jonah if cornered? My mind went to dark, dark places. It was Tuesday morning, nearly 36 hours since I last saw my son, when the call finally came. They found them. I collapsed into a chair as the officer on the phone told me that state troopers in Georgia, 2 states away, had spotted Ryan's car at a motel off the highway early that morning. Apparently, a motel clerk noticed a man and a little boy and thought they matched the Amber Alert description. Thank God for those alerts. The police got there, and, thank heavens, Jonah was found physically unharmed in the motel room, watching cartoons, though scared and crying for me. They arrested Ryan on the spot. My mom and I got in the car and drove straight to Georgia as soon as we had confirmation. It's a blur, but I think the local police offered to coordinate bringing Jonah back home, and I just screamed, "No, I'm gonna get my baby!" It was a long drive, but adrenaline kept me going. I'll never forget reuniting with Jonah at the sheriff's office there. I ran in, and he ran into my arms, and both of us just bawled our eyes out. He clung to me so tightly my ribs ached. I was sobbing into his hair, telling him, "I'm here, Mommy's here, I've got you, I've got you." I think every adult in that building had tears in their eyes watching us. Jonah was confused and upset, but once he calmed a little, he wouldn't stop talking, telling me how Daddy said we were going on a secret adventure and that Daddy was upset and driving fast. He said Daddy told him I knew about the trip, which just makes my blood boil. At one point, my sweet boy looked up at me and asked, "Is Daddy going to jail?" He said you would say he's a bad guy. I had to choke back my own rage and tears to gently explain that Daddy made a very bad choice, and yes, because of that, the police had to take him to timeout for grown-ups. I couldn't even begin to explain jail properly, not then. Jonah just started crying again, saying he misses Daddy. Despite everything that Bastard has done, Jonah still loves his father and is heartbroken, and that breaks my heart in turn. As for Ryan, well, he is in jail awaiting a bunch of charges. Parental kidnapping, violation of the custody order, etc. I have no idea what's going to happen to him, and right now I can't bring myself to care. Part of me is still so enraged I'd like to see him rot there. Another part of me is just numb and sad. Sad that it came to this. Sad for my son who will have to grow up with this trauma and a father behind bars. It's a twisted mix of emotions that I wouldn't wish on anyone. Legally, it's pretty much over now. With what he did, I doubt he'll have any custodial rights for the foreseeable future. My lawyer says I'll almost certainly get sole custody, and the court will likely only allow him supervised visitation at best, maybe after a psychological evaluation. Honestly, I don't even know when I'll feel okay about Jonah seeing him again, supervised or not. Right now, Jonah is terrified whenever we mention his dad. He's afraid Daddy will take him away from Mommy again. Hearing my child say that, it's like a knife in my gut. The aftermath has been messy. I'm getting him into therapy to help process all this. I'm gonna need therapy to process all this. Friends have been reaching out. Even those who doubted me now realize I wasn't the crazy one. Ashley, of all people, showed up at my door yesterday with tears in her eyes, apologizing for ever believing Ryan's lies. I accepted her apology, but I can't really focus on that right now. My whole world is about making sure Jonah feels safe and loved and stable. If I'm being honest, I'm not okay. I'm relieved, yes, deeply relieved that Jonah is back with me and physically unharmed. But I'm not okay. I'm a wreck. I haven't slept more than a couple hours in days. I jump at every little noise. I cry at random times, out of relief, out of anger, out of sorrow for my child. This isn't the victory some might think it is. It's a tragedy all around. I once loved that man, and I did my best to co-parent with him, to keep things civil for our son. I tried so damn hard, but his pride, his need to win, to control, it destroyed everything. He's destroyed himself, and in trying to hurt me, he hurt our innocent child most of all. I will never forgive him for that.